Welcome, everyone, to the webinar from Condemnation to Consequences campaign, which will call for accountability to end the occupation of Palestine, which is a new World Council of Churches campaign. It will start today, and we have a list of distinguished speakers, and throughout our webinar, you are welcome to put your questions in the Q&A and the comments in the chat section. My name is George Sahar. I'm the advocacy officer out of Jerusalem. And honestly, very glad to see this activity finally being put together. It was a very difficult effort given the war situation and evolving details and changes, but fortunately it has been put together due to the effort of the team who has been working diligently on this. Without further ado, we go to the opening remarks of the World Council of Churches by Reverend Dr. Kenneth Ntata, who is the Program Director, Life Justice and Peace out of the team in Geneva. It's a registered video due to his travels, but we are happy to have the opportunity to give the floor to Reverend Kenneth to open the webinar.
So we are glad to be meeting today to launch this World Council of Churches ecumenical accompaniment for our people in Palestine and Israel. This campaign called from condemnation to consequences. When we conceived this campaign, we were operating in an environment that is completely different from what has happened in the last 72 hours. So we are gathered now at a very grave moment of escalation in the Middle East. And the direct confrontation between Israel and Iran, and of course the involvement of many countries is looking at devastating the whole region. But our campaign needs to remain focused on the commitments that the churches have made together with all the partners to say, how do we move from the statements and condemnations of the continued occupation and annexation of Palestine, and to try and translate this into concrete changes and transformation. Now, the noise of missiles and military rhetoric may drown the important decisions that took place in July 2024 when the International Court of Justice delivered an advisory opinion declaring that Israel's continued occupation of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are unlawful. The court affirmed that the settlement expansion violates international law and that the occupation must come to an end, the settlements must be dismantled, and that reparations should be paid. It is also made clear that all states are under obligation not to recognize or assist the unlawful situation that continues to unfold in the Holy Land. The current context of war, of course, can undermine these commitments or cover them up because of the war. But unfortunately, under the cover of this war, we can see the annexation advancing in many ways. And that's why even though we are in a changed environment, this campaign must continue. History shows that prolonged war often normalize permanent control. Under the shadow of security crisis, temporary occupation quietly shifts toward irreversible annexation. The settlement expansion, discriminatory legal system, land appropriation, and demographic engineering are not isolated policies. They are steps in one common trajectory. And the court, the ICJ, has named that this trajectory is unlawful. And the World Council of Churches, in its decision, also in Johannesburg at the Central Committee in June, lifted up the need for the churches to have a structured engagement in addressing these injustices. So the WCC must continue lifting up its commitment to the support of the Palestinian people, and to find ways in which we must continue to push the Israeli government to abide by this international ruling, even in the context of this war. And that's why we want to lift up this campaign. This campaign is not targeting the people of Israel. It is about defending the principle against annexation, against exploitation. It is a principle against occupation, and it is a principle that stands up against continued annexation in violation of international law. The churches, therefore, are called to stand where the law and justice meet to promote human dignity. We cannot preach reconciliation while ignoring the structural injustices that continue to be promoted and to manifest themselves in the context of the Palestinian people. So we speak of peace here in where injustices also continue. And for this reason, our commitment to upholding international law is our way of saying peace cannot be realized where injustice and where unjust structures continue to be reinforced. So we are defending the international law, while at the same time we are also listening to the Palestinian people, so that we know that our accompaniment is informed by their own priorities and their concerns. This campaign, from condemnation to consequences, means moving from statements of accountability that we have issued as churches, but also to align economic, diplomatic, and political action with legal obligations that the ICJ pronounced. It means insisting that annexation, whether formal or de facto, must be stopped, and that the churches will make their commitment visible in standing against such annexations. So I look forward to our further engagement in this regard, and I encourage that we mobilize our churches across the world so that they support this campaign in their own ways at a local level, but together at the global level as we support this from the World Council of Churches. Thank you very much.
Our thanks to Reverend Kenneth. As probably you can hear, we're doing this against the backdrop of sirens. At the moment, missiles seem to be landing, but what can we do? This is life here. At this point, the next speaker will be Dr. Judith Oppenheimer. She is the executive director of Ayra Amim, our partner organization, and she has been in that position since 2008. Dr. Oppenheimer is a human rights and feminist activist, specialized in Jerusalem, urban and political dynamics. and she is the holder of a PhD from Bar Ilan University and widely published in academic and media platforms. We will have an in-depth presentation from Dr. Judith as an update about the latest developments and E1 and settlement annexation and the host of issues where we will be listening from her valuable field experience on the latest as far as the occupation and annexation is concerned. Dr. Oppenheimer, we will have the recorded message, unfortunately, not in person, also due to the challenge of the war and accessibility. So our team is welcome to roll her presentation.
I thank WCC and EAPPI for the invitation to share Iramim's perspective on East Jerusalem these days. Over the course of the past 2 years, there has been rapidly unfolding development in Jerusalem and its vicinity that have largely been overshadowed in the devastating war in Gaza and with the war undergoing right now. Since the outbreak of the war, the current Israeli government has only intensified move of displacement and disposition in East Jerusalem. Settlement expansion in East Jerusalem has surged alongside the recent approval of the E1 settlement project, which will bisect the West Bank, sever it from East Jerusalem, and displace thousands of Palestinians, dealing a death blow to a two-state framework. This is yet another move towards advancing de facto annexation of the West Bank and further entrenching an apartheid reality. At the same time, there has been an unprecedented rise in home demolitions and forced evictions and intensified measures to suppress Palestinian freedom of expression, identity, movement, and education. Moves leading to the complete collapse of the status quo on the Haram al-Sharif Mount have likewise increased in an unparalleled manner. Together, these actions threaten not only the future of Jerusalem, but the broader prospects of peace, justice, and security for both peoples. I would like now to get more into details on the developments that I just described. The scale of new settlement plans advancing in East Jerusalem over the past few years exceeds that of any period in the last 2 decades. Plan for 9 new settlements with over 20,000 housing units have advanced in East Jerusalem since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, one of which under construction, Givat HaMatos, and 3 of which were approved. Givat HaMatos, once a long-standing international red line due to its lethal geographical impact, is the first new major settlement to be built in East Jerusalem in over 20 years. Many of these plans are designated for lands in the hearts of Palestinian neighborhoods, including flashpoint neighborhoods like Sheikh Jarrah, while others aim to encircle Palestinian areas and disconnect East Jerusalem from the West Bank. Alongside these, 2 plans for 3,400 housing units were approved for the controversial E1 area, a strategic territorial corridor located between East Jerusalem and the northern and southern West Bank. The approval of the East E1 settlement project demonstrates Israel's determination to pursue what Minister Smotrich has just described as a strategic program to bury the possibility of a Palestinian state and effectively annex the West Bank. Housing demolitions likewise have we have witnessed a huge spike. In contrast to this major surge in new settlements, the Israeli government continues to deprive Palestinians of the basic right to housing and shelter, despite them constituting 40% of the city population. This plays out in the form of systematically neglecting to advance and/or approve zoning plans for residential development, while selectively imposing home demolition on Palestinians under the pretext of lacking building permits. Such policies have intensified in recent years with new restrictions, leading to a rapidly escalating housing crisis, widespread unpermitted construction, and eventual home demolitions, effectively functioning as a mechanism of forced displacement from the city. In 2025, 118 homes have been demolished, which is said to become the second highest annual total after 2024. 181 home demolitions were carried out in 2024, constituting the highest annual rate on record. Since the beginning of 2026, 58 structures have been demolished in East Jerusalem, including 11 residential and 47 non-residential. Of these, 11 were self-demolished, including 10 residential and 1 non-residential. The self-demolition is a result of the new restrictions that were imposed by the government recently. Entire communities in areas targeted for settlement expansion face large-scale demolition, including Al-Bustan in Silwan, just below the old city walls, one of the most sensitive areas in Jerusalem. Some 150 houses, home to around 1,500 residents, are under threat of destruction to make way for a biblical-themed touristic site. More than 30 homes have been demolished in Al-Bustan since February 2023, including the home of the neighborhood spokesperson and a European Union-funded community center that served more than 1,000 residents, among them hundreds of children. In early February 2026, 15 additional demolition orders were issued as a preparation, residential fences were demolished. 87 also in Silwan, 87 families of approximately 700 people in Baten El Hawa neighborhood of Silwan have been expelled or face immediate expulsion by the settler organization Ateret Kohanim, which seized control of more than 2 decades ago of the Ben Benisti Trust, established in the late 19th century by the founders of the Yemenite Jewish village on that site. The eviction claims are based on discriminatory 1970 law, allowing Jews to reclaim properties owned before 1948 that remained under Jordanian rule, while the 1950 absentee property law prevents Palestinians from reclaiming properties lost in the same war within Israeli territory. Many families arrived as refugees to Baten El Hawa after 1948 and now risk losing their homes a second time. A recent Ministry of Justice investigation opened following a lawsuit filed by Iramim found that the Ateret Kohanim settler organization seized control of the trust in order to take over properties in Silwan and is in a deep conflict of interest. Nevertheless, evictions have recently resumed in full force after nearly a decade of inactivity. Some 33 families have been expelled to date, and a further 28 face immediate expulsion. When we say immediate expulsion, that means immediately after Ramadan, after exhausting all legal proceedings. Meanwhile, settlers have moved into vacated homes, and their presence alongside their bodyguards is a source of constant provocation. Another new measure of land confiscation is the land registration procedures, formerly known as settlement of land title. It has emerged as the latest tool for large-scale land appropriation in East Jerusalem, deepening the threats of Palestinian disposition and displacement. Presented as an administrative measure, ostensibly designed to benefit Palestinians, the state is in fact exploiting the process to facilitate mass land confiscation for Jewish settlement while further eroding Palestinian rights to their land. Land registration is ostensibly meant to protect property rights and strengthen the rule of the law. But since 2018, it has become a primary tool for seizing Palestinian land in East Jerusalem. Iramim and Bimcoms and our colleague Human Rights Organization, our joint monitoring reveals that of 50 blocks covering about 2,300 dunams, where land registration has been completed, 85% were registered to the state or settlers, and only 1% to Palestinians, placing entire community at risk of displacement. I would like to point out to the case of Tuba. In Tuba, in the southern perimeter of East Jerusalem, an entire Palestinian community is at risk of losing their homes and lands due to land registration. About 150 residents recently received eviction order after a land registration process had been advanced and completed without notifying them. Their land were registered under the name of the JNF, Jewish National Fund. These families lived in homes built with permits, acquired only after establishing linkages to the land, and yet their owners have no protection against land registration processes. A January 2026 government decision allocated new budget to land registration. The decision also explicitly involved the custodian of absentee property, a finance ministry department under the Smotrich Authority that seizes Palestinian land and transfers them to the states and settlers in land registration processes. Thus, the absentee property law has found an amplifier in land registration. The custodian roles in planning and building processes has also increased significantly due to new regulations. Smotrich's recent expansion of state authority over Area A and B includes recently published includes replicating in the West Bank the land registration procedure already initiated and currently being implemented in East Jerusalem. This enables rapid disposition through formal state mechanism, part of his declared goal to forcibly displace Palestinians from Area C into fragmented enclaves and annex 82% of the West Bank to establish Jewish supremacy. In the Al-Aqsa Haram al-Sharif, we are witnessing collapse of the status quo, move by the Israeli government and temple movement that systematically violate the long-standing status quo arrangement on the Haram al-Sharif Temple Mount, intensified over the 2 years in an unprecedented manner. While Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to pay lip service to the status quo, the government is rather facilitating a radical change of arrangement on the Mount. This includes unparalleled restriction on Muslim access to Al-Aqsa, daily incidents of Jewish prayer and rituals on the Mount, and a significant rise in close coordination between temple movement activists, the Israeli police, and government officials, including Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir. While the status quo on the Holy Esplanade has been gradually eroding over time, it now faces an unparalleled collapse, which carries far-reaching ramifications on Jerusalem and the region as a whole. During this Ramadan, and under the cover of the war with Iran, Al-Aqsa Mosque and compound have been closed to worshippers and non-Muslim visitors since Saturday, in accordance with Israeli military and police instruction forbidding large gathering. Similarly, the Western Wall and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre are largely also closed, with the exception of Jewish Quarter residents who are permitted to pray in the underground sections of the Western Wall Plaza. As a result, all Muslim religious activity in the Al-Aqsa compound is suspended during this Ramadan. The police are also restricting access to the Old City, officially limiting entry to residents only. However, Iramim has documented clear discrimination in enforcement at entrances used primarily by Muslims, Damascus Gate, Herod's Gate, and Lion Gates. Police screen those seeking entry, while no such screening occurs at entrances used primarily by Israelis, namely Newgate and Jaffa Gate. Furthermore, while Palestinians are prevented from entering through Damascus Gate unless they are Old City residents, Israelis are permitted to enter freely. Acts aim at suppressing Palestinian identity, freedom of expression, freedom of movements, and the right to education according to one's own heritage, culture, and historical narrative likewise significantly increase. Over the past year, the Israeli Knesset advanced legislation that threatened to further erode East Jerusalem's fragile education system, including a bill to bar the employment of teachers with degrees from the West Bank universities, new restrictions on teachers' freedom of expressions, and laws mandating the closure of 7 UNRWA-operated schools. Alongside this, further moves were made to impose the Israeli curriculum and culture on Palestinian schools in the city. Together, these measures deepen Israeli control over East Jerusalem education system while undermine Palestinian children's rights to study according to their own collective identity, heritage, and culture. Under the current war with Iran, the situation of profound discrimination is also reflected in the absence of adequate shelters in East Jerusalem and severe restrictions of freedom of movement, particularly in the neighborhoods beyond the barrier. As we are now approaching the International Women's Day on March 8th, we must note that all of these issues have severe implications on the lives of women and children in East Jerusalem, and this can be elaborated later in the Q&A phase. Through these mechanisms, Palestinian residents of East Jerusalem face an accelerating erosion of their presence as individuals and families, while legal protection are systematically dismantled. Settler and the current government are combining forces to fast-track irreversible facts on the ground ahead of Israeli election this year, weaponizing state power, legal mechanism, and selective violence to permanently alter the demographic and territorial reality of both the West Bank and East Jerusalem and eliminate any possibility of a political resolution. Thank you.
Our thanks to Dr. Judith for this insightful input, and I would like to announce at this point that she is available with us online and will be able to answer the questions towards the end. Glad to have her with us now. Thank you, Dr. Judith, so much for this comprehensive input. Now, our speaker, Mayada Tarazi, who is going to speak about Palestinian women perspective and the impact of the war on the Palestinian people. She has not been able to join us due to the war situation, and also it wasn't possible for her to record her talk. So we have a written text that will be presented to us by our colleague Hannah Qirri, who is a member of the IRG, the International Reference Group, and the Jerusalem Liaison Office. Hannah is a dynamic colleague of ours, and she has graciously accepted on short notice to read to us the talk by Mayada Tarazi, and then our team will answer questions. But I want to take one moment to introduce who Mayada is. She is the Director of Operations, Human Resources, and International Relations at the YMCA. And she has 25 years of experience in administration, project management, compliance, and organizational development. And she is an active member in church affairs locally in Jerusalem and with the WCC. We thank her very much for having taken the time to prepare the text. Unfortunately, she's not present at the moment, so I yield the floor to our colleague, Hannah. Hannah, welcome.
Thank you, George, and thank you, and greetings to everyone from Jerusalem. And as my colleague George mentioned, that Mayada has to attend an urgent matter, so I'm taking over to read her talk this evening on this webinar. From Condemnation to Consequences campaign. It is important to mention what is happening in our region at this very moment. The genocide in Gaza continues to bring devastating destruction, with civilians, especially women and children, paying the highest price. Families are being displaced again and again. Many are still without homes, without access to water, food, medical care, and safety. In the West Bank, including Jerusalem, military operations, arrests, and settler violence have intensified. Restrictions are tighter. Fear is deeper. The uncertainty about tomorrow is heavier than ever. Under these circumstances, the situation continues to escalate. We may say we are managing or surviving, but what is happening is not normal, and it is not acceptable, and too often it feels as though no one is doing enough to stop this war. For many around the world, this day is a celebration for Palestinians, and especially Palestinian women from Jerusalem. It is also a reminder that dignity, survival, and justice are part of our daily struggle. Regardless where I work or I volunteer, I'm speaking with you today as a Palestinians, students, daughters, mothers, and workers. I thank you not only for listening, but for caring, and I hope for being ready to act. What daily life means for us. Let me begin with what daily life means for us. A mother holds her child tightly while crossing an Israeli checkpoint, never knowing if she will be stopped, searched, or sent back. A young woman dreams of becoming a doctor, but her access to university is uncertain because the checkpoints she must pass through may or may not open that day. A family wakes up to the sound of bulldozers and watches their home disappear within minutes. These moments are not rare, they are normal. Freedom of movement, life under constant restriction. For Palestinians, freedom of movement is not a right, it is a daily struggle. A trip of just 15 kilometers between Jerusalem and Ramallah can take more than 2 hours. Checkpoints close without warning. What should be a short drive becomes a test of patience, fear, and humiliation and control. How we resist. Palestinians invented mobile applications and created WhatsApp groups to track checkpoints in a real time, where traffic is blocked, which roads are open, which ones to avoid, what is the status of the checkpoint. On some days, for example, I have to drive more than 65 kilometers just to get home instead of driving 12 kilometers. This is not exceptional. This is daily life. The waiting, the wasted hours, the emotional fatigue slowly become normal, but they should never be acceptable. To enter occupied Jerusalem, Palestinians must pass through Israeli checkpoints. Women holding West Bank IDs can only cross with special permits, usually limited to medical care, work, or religious holidays, and only for short periods. Even children need permits. Also to mention that work permits has been suspended for almost 2 years now. For women, this means uncertainty at every stage of life. Can we reach a hospital to give birth? Can we attend university? Can we go to work? Can we pray in our holy places? Access to health care, education, and family life is restricted, and at sometimes not. Palestinian women from Jerusalem face another layer of control. We are forbidden from living in the West Bank without risking the loss of our Jerusalem residency. Marriage and family life become political decisions. Family unification with West Bank spouses is restricted and often denied. At the same time, we are required to pay taxes to Israeli authorities despite living under occupation without equal rights or protection. In East Jerusalem, women increasingly fear arrest, not only because of where they live or how they move, but because of what they say. Israeli regulations allow the detention of Palestinians for social media posts expressing solidarity with Gaza. This fear silences women. It limits public participation. It forces many to choose survival over expression. Displacement without leaving. I grew up in a house that was once considered part of Jerusalem. After the construction of the wall, that house was placed on the other side. As a result, I nearly lost my Jerusalem residency, despite being born here and living all of my life in the city. Only in 2020, after renting an apartment within the Jerusalem boundaries, I was able to register again as a resident. This is what displacement looks like in Jerusalem. You don't always leave your home. Sometimes your home is taken away from you. The wall does not only divide land, it separates families from their past and people from their city. The West Bank, living under settler violence, beyond Jerusalem, in the West Bank, entire communities live under constant threat. In villages like Taibe, Berzeit, Aboud, and Al-Mughayr, settler attacks are almost daily. Homes are attacked, land is confiscated, crops are destroyed, cars are burned, access to water is blocked. Just last month in Berzeit town, settlers attacked a family home and destroyed agricultural land. Women are often the one left to deal with the aftermath, to rebuild daily life while carrying deep trauma and fear. These are not isolated incidents. They happen again and again with little accountability. What about freedom of worship? Restrictions also reach into our spiritual lives. During Easter last year, Jerusalem was heavily militarized. The old city was surrounded by checkpoints, making it extremely difficult for Christians to reach their churches. The same happens during Ramadan. Palestinians, especially women and youth, are restricted from reaching Al-Aqsa Mosque through age limits, permits, and sudden closures. And with the current situation, Al-Aqsa Mosque is closed, and the Holy Sepulchre Church is closed too. I want to share a short story. This is what Mayada says. A woman from East Jerusalem once told me that every night before she sleeps, she places her family's documents, IDs, residency papers, birth certificates near the front door. Not because she plans to leave, but because she fears being forced to. She said quietly, "My children think this is normal. That's what scares me." This is what policy looks like inside a home. As we mark International Women's Day, it is important to remember that for Palestinian women, justice is not a symbol. When East Jerusalem is discussed internationally, we hear legal and political language. But for women, these debates translate into very simple, very human questions. Will we be able to stay in our homes? Will we be able to move freely? Will our children grow up feeling safe? So what can we do? What actions? Amplify Palestinian women's voices? Advocate for policies that protect Palestinians, especially women's rights, support grassroots, youth and women-led initiatives, hold Israel accountable for violations of international law and human rights. Of course, this is the end of Mayada's talk. And of course, thank you for listening. But from my side, I would like to indicate just a sentence and say that I think it is very important for us to highlight the defend for human rights of the Palestinian people, for their dignity and for their humanity, and to call on the international community to uphold justice and to really change this situation for Palestinians. And thank you, and it was my pleasure really to cover up for my colleague Mayada.
Hannah, thank you for reading to us Mayada's talk. When we go to the question section, please stay with us, and I would like to invite you to participate also in answering questions relevant to Mayada's presentation, because we want the voice of Palestinian women leaders heard, and we want to know what is it that women want by way of action. So stay with us and help us answer the questions. Thank you very much. And our thanks, we send it to Mayada, and we hope we will have you with us during better times. Our last speaker, last but not least, definitely, which in many ways very close to our hearts, all of us, I think, we will hear the experience of a former EA. John Wardlaw, who was with us in Group 101, which was very recent. And allow me to say, John, on a personal note, I'm happy to see you again. You were with us in Jerusalem just recently. And we hope you will come back also during better times too. We always thrive on hope. John is an Australian commercial lawyer with over 20 years of experience. He contributed to international human rights efforts including engagement around the 1998 UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders and war crimes documentation relevant to the former Yugoslavia. And he, like I said earlier, he also served with us as EA just recently with the Group 101. He will talk about the experience of an EA, which is always very valuable because they are really at the heart of things, you know, battling the human rights challenges and standing in solidarity and action with those who need us most. John, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much, George. Just wanting to check to make sure that my screen is shared with people. Excellent. That looks like it is. So, thank you. My name's John. I am speaking to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation in Australia, and I acknowledge their elders past, present, and emerging. I was privileged to be part of the Jerusalem team in the EAPPI Group 101 in November last year and through to the end of January this year. And I've been asked to share with you some of the stories and my experiences along the way. Obviously, time is a little short, so I will have to go fairly quickly because there are many stories that I could tell, but I will just stick to the ones that I've got prepared for you. So first of all, I just wanted to talk about Silwan a little bit. For those of you who are aware of Silwan, it's a very densely built up area and it has a number of houses that have eyes painted on them. And you can see, if I make the pictures bigger, you can see eyes there and there and there and there and there and there. This is part of a community-based public art project where they are sending a message to people that people are watching the evictions and the forced displacement of people from Silwan. All of these people in the houses that have the eyes on them are subject to eviction notices. And as we heard earlier, the whole concept of these evictions is very fraught and possibly not legal. Anyway, in Button al Hawa, there's a place where we spoke to a man named Zahir Rajabi, and he lived next door to his cousin, and his cousin lived in the house that you can see there with the eyes above the doorway. Inside that doorway, there was a family where there was a son who had been in a coma for 6 years. He was on a life support system. There was a daughter who was down the stairs. She was in a wheelchair because she had a disability. 4 days before we met with Zuhair, we were told that the military had arrived and said, here's an eviction order, you have to get out. And so his cousin said, well, if you can find a hospital for my son and an adequate place for my daughter to live, then I will gladly throw all my stuff out on the street and walk away. But this is not possible. And so their response to that was, all right, you have 10 days. So they had 10 days to find somewhere to move to, which was appropriate for someone on life support and someone in a wheelchair. And I listened to some of the conversations about trying to find accommodation in East Jerusalem. It is not easy. It is very expensive. And some of the places that they actually got and applied for and were accepted for then turned around and said, no, we've actually been offered more money by someone else. In fact, it was an NGO that was trying to do the right thing by the local Palestinian owners of property, but at the same time was meaning that Palestinians who were being evicted from their their houses, could not afford to find a place to live. Eventually they did, and that's not, well, it's outrageous, really. It's outrageous. Zuhair was also instrumental in creation of a community group, and these are the pictures of that place where he said to me, when I get evicted, I don't think I can ever go back there. It would just be too detrimental to my health. I can't face it. So I won't go back once I'm evicted, and the eviction notice is just waiting to be served, and it's not long. As we heard, there are lots of places in Silwan that are exactly the same situation. As you can see, when the settlers moved into the place where the person on life support had been evicted from, they boarded up the eyes over the door, because I would like to think that they had some degree of embarrassment and shame about the fact that they had evicted someone like that from their house, and they didn't want to be seen, and they didn't want to have the eyes on full display. Another place in Silwan, which is where the demolitions were occurring, in Wadi Kadum, we heard about, you can see here a picture from Silwanik on Instagram, that was a house, 4 stories, 90 to 100 people living in the house. And then on the 22nd of December at 4:30 in the morning, they were awoken by the military and a settler youth team that said, you have 7 minutes to collect your belongings and leave before the apartment block is demolished. 4:30 in the morning, and you have 7 minutes to choose what do you take. And I hear about the identity documents that are kept by the doorway, but you've got children, you've got family, you've got things that you need to live, and you're told, get out, otherwise they will be buried. There was one 17-year-old boy who was beaten and injured by the porters who were there to assist with the removal of the household items from the place. And when he was released from medical care, he was interrogated, and then he was sentenced to 3 days house arrest. And this is what the house looked like. So how you have 3 days house arrest under a pile of rubble, where you have 19 families, almost 100 people with their belongings buried under there, it's just obscene. So that was Silwan. We also went to other places around the E1 area and met with a number of the Bedouin communities. In particular, as you can see along this is road number 1. And for those of you who don't know about the E1 plan, I think Minister Smotrich put it quite well when he said the Palestinian state is being erased from the table, not with slogans, but with actions. Every settlement, every neighborhood, every housing unit is another nail in the coffin of this dangerous idea. The idea being that there could be a Palestinian state and that people could be allowed to stay where they are and not be displaced. We went to Khan al-Ahmar, or there are a few Khan al-Ahmar communities we went to, but the one at Abu al-Halu, where Abu Hamiz is the community head of the community there, he told us that in the first week of December, soldiers from the civil administration came to survey the land every day of that first week. And then they went from house to house and counted how many houses there were, how many people were living here. They went to the school to get data, and they took pictures of the houses all along the way. And he said that translates to something very dangerous. And he's right, because the E1 plan, as it's implemented, will mean that, and you can see from this map, the barrier that's going to be around the whole of the area, all of these Bedouin communities are not going to be allowed to be there. Or they're not allowed to be on the E1 and they're not allowed to use this road. This road will be exclusively for settlers. And so the communities in here are going to be displaced. There's just no question in my mind that that's going to be the outcome of what happens. We did visit Al-Hathrura, which is just a little bit further outside. And Al-Hathrura, when we visited them in December, told us that they were living in conditions that were just absolutely appalling. Settlers were coming every night with loud music and throwing stones to keep them and their children awake. The settlers were bringing sheep into the people's houses, and the settlers were beating children. Every man in the village had been detained for at least 8 hours for no reason. Almost every night, soldiers came between 1 and 3 a.m. to get everyone outside and decide at that point who they would take to prison. So 1:30, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're brought outside. Oh, you go to prison now. So you can imagine you don't get much sleep anyway. And they are faced to having to sell their sheep to buy feed for the other sheep because they can't get access to shepherding outside shepherding in the surrounding areas because they're told that's a security risk and they'll get security bans if they go out. So that's Al-Hathrura. Then there was Mikdawish. Mikdawish was a little bit different. This is a picture of me going to Mikdawish, which is down on the left-hand side of that, just over the hill. It is surrounded by settlers, and they come and they stand there. But Abu Suleiman, who's the leader, he can speak Hebrew. And so he invites them in for coffee and invites them to tell him why they think that they should be taking over his land and why can't he stay and here, have a cup of coffee, which they not so politely refuse, but they don't quite know how to respond, so they turn their backs and look the other way. I've got a photograph of the flag that they put there, and Abu Suleiman said, "We want to look after your flag for you because we know that's what you want. We think you should make it higher. We think you should make it 3 meters high so the animals can't eat it." And they didn't know how to respond to that either. Sorry, I'm running over time, George. I'll just do one last thing, talk about Jabal al-Baba.
Yes, please do. If you can make it concise, that will be great.
Yeah. Jabal al-Baba, you saw from the picture is of where it is in the E1 plan, is down here beside where they're introducing the new road. They've just started building, or just on the 7th of December, they got an order to say that the road would start to be built. This road moves people from the south of the West Bank to the north of the West Bank, but stops them from getting anywhere in between. And some of it's underground. It's not clear to me exactly what the situation is, how much will be accessible by any areas. But you can see Jabal al-Baba is surrounded by a wall, they won't be allowed to go on the E1 area, and so they are just stuck. That land is actually owned by the Pope, or at least it's owned by it's part of the Vatican. It was given to the Vatican by the Jordanians. And so I've written a letter to a cardinal in Australia asking him to speak to the Pope and suggest to him that this is actually tantamount to invasion of the Vatican See and that he should stand up and do something about it. I sat and spoke with people from Silwan whose houses were demolished and were evicted and had nowhere to go. I sat with Bedouins in and around E1 area and learned of their lives of struggle, restriction, persecution and denial. I learned a lot about the strength, hospitality, compassion, resilience, steadfast determination of the people of the occupied Palestinian territories. I was frequently asked what my country had done about the grave breaches of international law and what would I do about it. And I'm afraid the answers are manifestly inadequate. The leader of Waqfa, when he took us on a tour around the Al-Aqsa compound, asked us to show him what we had done, show him something. He said, "Show me something." And again, it's hard to know what to say in response to that demand. So as the eyes of Still one can be covered up, but the eyes of God can't. We are called to stand up before the international community and demand action. How else will we show our faces to God? Thank you very much.
John, that was great. Thank you. At this point, I would like to take a moment to introduce to you the campaign itself and what we are planning to do. The campaign is meant to take action to educate your communities in order to bring about change through your elected officials. And we have the resources available on the World Council of Churches website, and I will present it to you in a nutshell in 4 categories. One is the Take Action section, where we have a draft letter, but please note that the entire campaign is designed in a flexible way that takes into consideration the nuances in each country that are different from one place to the other. So it is indeed adaptable within the framework of the campaign so as to suit each country. We have also the talking points. And again, we have options also that you can choose from, and it provides also background information. In addition, we have a wonderful faith reflection by Bishop Ahmad Haddad, the new Evangelical Lutheran Church Bishop in Jordan and the Holy Land. And it's important because it provides a spiritual content for our talking points. The second category is from the field, and these are 11 mini feature stories because we always do our advocacy. We collaborate international law and international human rights law with the impact on the ground. What does it mean to ordinary people? How does it translate into the negation of their rights and their suffering, and also what needs to be done? Those are really very wonderful stories because it really captures the essence of what the EAs do all the time, meaning they tell the story of the people and they make the human rights violations tangible. The third category I would like to bring to your attention is the campaign asks. We are calling on all states, churches, international institutions to impose consequences for the human rights violations, because when there are no consequences, there is no reason for change. So we have to put a price tag in terms of international law on the violations so that we make it expensive, and therefore people hopefully will start thinking twice before it happens. The fourth category is the videos and the webinar itself. These also will be on the WCC website. We will have the webinar posted, so you're free to share it widely. And there are also videos, that we and our national coordinator partners have created together, working on this. That they're brief, but and they're also easily, can be disseminated to various groups. And again, it shows the situation on the ground. Please check it out on our website, and you're free to use it. And if you have any questions or further needs, anything that you think where we can be of positive input, let us know. We will be glad to work together and further the cause of just moving away from condemnation, because honestly, we speak to the Palestinians in the field, and as much as they respect and appreciate statements of solidarity, they're also tired and they want to see action. At this point, I would like to move to the Q&A, and I'm hoping we will have enough time to see how much we can answer. I will try. We have 7 questions, which is fantastic. I will appreciate it if the people who answer the questions are a bit brief, because I'm trying to give the chance to answer all of the questions. We will see if we can do that. The question number 1 is to Dr. Oppenheimer. Do Iramim and other anti-occupation groups support boycott, such as nonviolent course of action challenging Israel's occupation and settlement expansion and genocide? We can't hear you.
Here I am.
Yes.
I unmute
Yes. Now
myself.
that's good. Yes.
Yeah.
Now that's good. Yes, please.
So thank you for hosting me, and thank you for the question. I just wanted to say that titles are not necessary, and Judith is enough.
Okay.
Regarding the question, I have to answer it in a kind of a mild way, to say that we obliged to work within the Israeli law, whether we feel it is a just or unjust law. So, and unfortunately, this is not a question that I can answer. And we respect the Israeli law. At the same time, we are trying to work against injustices, and there are, it was appalling to listen to other speakers as well. Injustices are huge and overwhelming.
Okay.
And we are trying to do as much as we can.
The follow-on question on this, Judith, is international law optional? Can it be enforced?
I think it should be enforced, and I very much identify with the title of your campaign, and with the call that is coming out of this campaign and out of this webinar, and it is a call for accountability. And it's a call to stop condemnation and instead applying consequences. And I fully identify with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. The question now is to Iskandar. And again, for the sake of time, Iskandar, it's a long question, but we'll see how you can handle it. What can be done to get councils of churches in countries such as Canada, USA, Europe, Australia, and other countries to join this campaign if they haven't done so already?
Okay, thank you, George. The From Condemnation to Consequences campaign urges churches and governments to move beyond statements and pursue concrete, lawful accountability regarding the occupation. Grounded in the ICJ's July 2024 advisory opinion, it provides fact sheets, as you already stated and detailed just now, webinars, templates, letters, testimonies. National councils can endorse the campaign, lobby. Some of them has already did, and some others has already co-sponsored the campaign as well. So yeah, your national council can endorse the campaign, lobby governments, promote resources, or become sending bodies for accompaniers. And this is also crucial for us. So congregations can use the study material that EAPPI produced as part of WCC, of course. They can use the asks and talking points that George has just listed, denominational guides as well, online courses, whatever you have. Everything is already online and published, and you can use. You can also refer to us either by email or to our addresses, and we will be more than happy to provide you with that information. Thank you.
That's very good, Skandar. Thank you. Our fourth question is to Carla Kijoyan, the Middle East Executive. Carla, the question to you is, why is it not possible for the church, especially WCC, to advocate for sanctions against Israel?
Thank you very much, George. Actually, the World Council of Churches has addressed this issue recently as well in June 2025 Central Committee in the statement calling to end apartheid, occupation and impunity in Palestine and Israel. And in that statement, we affirmed that where serious violations of international law persist without accountability, the international community has a responsibility to act. Therefore, the statement calls on states, churches and international institutions to consider targeted sanctions and related accountability measures to ensure respect of international law and human rights. Those measures are not considered as punitive, but they are considered as non-violent means of promoting justice and ending impunity. At the same time, we have a long-standing position supporting the boycott of goods and services produced in Israeli settlements located in the occupied Palestinian territories, which are considered themselves as illegal under international law. The rationale being that these settlements that are illegal under the Fourth Geneva Convention, therefore, economic activities connected to them should also not be supported. So we do call for sanctions, and all these resources can be found also on the WCC website and within our policies regarding Palestine and Israel.
Thank you, Carla, for the concise answer, but please stay with us because the fifth question is to Judith and you, both. What do you think about the possibility of United Nations troops to reduce tensions? Could WCC appeal to the UN to immediately establish UN troops as a peace force to protect the population against violent settlers? And is this very much highly needed or not in the occupied Palestinian territories? How both ladies would like to handle this, you are welcome to do so. The question was directed to both of you.
I'll be next.
Okay, très bien. Let me start. Well, from the perspective of the World Council of Churches, the protection of civilians living under occupation is first and foremost the legal responsibility of the occupying power under international humanitarian law, including the obligations set out in the Fourth Geneva Convention. So while the WCC cannot really request the deployment of peacemaking forces, because such a decision anyway lies within the United Nations Security Council, we consistently call on the international community and the United Nations to ensure that international law is upheld and that civilians are effectively protected. At the same time, as WCC, we advocate for just and sustainable solutions on the long term that address the root causes of violence and injustice, ensuring that security, dignity, and equal rights for all people in the region are ensured.
Judith, please.
I support every word. I couldn't say that better. So I echo every word.
She usually does.
Yes, it was perfectly said, and I support every word.
Okay, great. Thank you, both. Question number 6 is to you, Skandar. Are you aware of the letter from 76 members of U.S. Congress to the State Department addressing the issues in the villages of Taibe, Wadi Foqin, Al-Walaji, and Silwan? This took place through faith community efforts with Save the Jerusalem campaign. How can we leverage this message with your actions?
Okay, thank you. As a matter of fact, yes, we are aware of this letter by the congressional members of the United States. And yeah, as well, this is why we do recognize the significance and significant advocacy efforts undertaken through your faith community engagement and Save Jerusalem campaign as well. So to leverage on this, we would reference the congressional letter in our ongoing advocacy with diplomatic missions to reinforce the urgency and international attention to these communities. As you maybe know, We do a lot of lobby activities in Brussels and in the US as well. So this is something that we will actually be taking with us, on us, and we will use this congressional letter. Second, we will integrate its key points, I mean, this letter into our briefings, fact sheets, and protection reports to demonstrate cross-Atlantic concerns. Coordinate messaging so that local documentations and testimonies from the affected villages and others, of course, directly support the concerns raised in the letter. Explore a joint follow-up action, briefings, for example, webinars or coordinated outreach that builds on this congressional engagement and sustains pressure for accountability. And of course, other things, but yeah, it was like a quick question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Iskandar. You made the point anyway, so no worries. The last question we have is directed to Carla again. Carla, what informs the spiritual and human conscience of the theological scholars and teachers of our sisters and brothers of the Jews in Israel? Can they be engaged? The question is about engaging Jewish theologian, and can they be engaged? This is really the core of the question, apparently.
Thank you, George. Not only they can be engaged, it is necessary and essential actually for them to be engaged. And through our interreligious dialogue initiatives and partnerships within the WCC programs, we do work with Jewish scholars, and we are encouraged to have those conversations that are grounded in shared ethical values such as justice, the sanctity of life, the respect of human dignity. So dialogue with Jewish religious leaders, theologians, and academic institutions contribute to the mutual understanding and critical ethical reflection on the issues of occupation and on the issues of violations that are taking place in the Holy Land. Now, if I can, I don't know if I can allow myself to briefly say that there is no one single theologian position in Israel. So Jewish scholars, rabbis, and educators, they represent a wide spectrum of views regarding the relationship between faith, ethics, land, security, and justice. Their spiritual and ethical perspectives, of course, is shaped by multiple sources within the Jewish religious, historical, and ethical traditions, as well as the historic experience of the Jewish people.
Thank you, Carla. I'm trying to see if there is one more question to Skandar, and they're saying, how can I apply to become an EA? Something is going to come out of this webinar.
I'll send you my email, and then we will of course reference you to the national coordinator of your country. It depends on which country you're coming from. Right now, we work in more than 21 countries, and we are seeking more, let's say, to come. Right now, as soon as, let's say, I know where you're coming from, I will be able to direct you to the national coordinator in your country, and then hopefully, and we eagerly look to see you in Jerusalem soon, not late, sooner, not later, indeed.
Can I say one more word? Because
Please do, Judith. Please do.
As Judaism was the subject in the previous question, and I think that I'm happy to be the only Jew here, then and not in support of everything that was said. Yes, there are many. Judaism is probably not one thing, but I think that the way Judaism is used these days, and particularly in areas like Silwan. And I would like to also echo what was said by John about Silwan, and to mention another community of Silwan that I briefly mentioned in my talk, which is Al Bustan. And in the whole evictions and demolitions, mass demolition, which is I have to press the urgency of Silwan. There are two communities in Silwan, Al Bustan and Batan El Hawa, that were mentioned in my talk and also in John talks, that are currently being displaced. Altogether, more than 2,000 people and more than 200 families are currently being displaced. So if we are talking about accountability, it's please, I urge you, take the issue of Silwan, Al Bustan, and Batan El Hawa as a top issue, with the ultimate urgency. Now, the displacement of these two communities in Silwan and all these settlements activities in Silwan are done by the name of Judaism, of the biblical legacy of the place, which is, I cannot say how it's not my Judaism, but also I think it runs against the very logic of the Bible. If we actually read the Bible and what the Bible tells us about this place, sort of city of David or whatever, or Silwan, whatever we call it, the main story is the scene of King David when he misused his power as a king and sent Uriah to be killed in the battlefield because he wanted his wife, and this was a symbol of misuse of power and of injustice. So the Bible tells us, especially in this place, that this is not the way. This is not the way of Judaism, and this is not the way of the Bible, and this is something that we all can share. These morals we all can share, Jews and Christians and Muslims and humans alike. So in the name of Judaism, in the names of faith, in the name of religious people, I urge you to take Silwan and the communities of Silwan, Batan El Hawa, and Al Bustan, and other communities at immediate threat of displacement in East Jerusalem at the top of your agenda. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith. With this note of action, we come to a conclusion, but I'd like to emphasize something that you said, that the situation that we see here is not the Bible and is not God's design for the world, not from any religious perspective. And this definitely provides impetus for us to act and make sure that those who need to be aware and need to run with that spirit do. Thank you very much. With this, friends, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen, we come to the conclusion of the opening webinar. This is the beginning, not the end. I always say that advocacy is a process. And this process that we embarked on together today is the beginning of the campaign. The important thing is that we all follow up together and we go to our website and use that information, and together we can make a difference. This is what history has always taught us. From all my heart, I would like to thank the inspiring speakers, Judith, Mayada, and Hannah for helping, and John, of course, and also the teams that work tirelessly behind the scenes, the communications department in Geneva led by Mariana Edgerstein, Carla Kijoyan, the Middle East executive, our leader and manager, the team in Jerusalem, also Skandar, the NCs also. I don't want to forget anybody. The NCs participated with all vigor in this campaign and did an amazing job. And some of them are present with us here, and I always salute their diligence and their love for this program and for the joint dream that we have together for a better future, which I know someday will materialize. Thank you all very much. God bless you all and keep hope alive.